Hey, what's going on, everybody? David Noe with SpeakEasy HR, presented by Payroll Partners. It is June. I cannot believe it. We were off last week because of the holiday, but we are back at it. Episode 34 of SpeakEasy HR. My name is David Noe, host, producer, editor of this fun podcast I started almost a year ago. Cannot believe it. And I get a chance to talk with some amazing people like my upcoming guest today. Sean Luitjens from salary.com is with me today. Sean, welcome, my friend.
How's it going? Although I was waiting for you got to give me the professional GQ folded arms thing that's in the intro. I like that.
You like that? Yeah. Maybe next time we'll do that one.
That you will not find a photo of me like that anywhere. I can tell you that. So,
well, Sean, you and I have talked several times since we picked a date, and just like everybody else, we go through the exercise of talking about what's going on in your world, and you have a newer position with salary.com. So as we had talked through that, you said June will be a great time to come on and talk about what's going on in the world of total rewards and how it evolves with payroll, which is kind of what we do at Payroll Partners. So I'm excited to have this topic today, and we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. So I see some folks coming in. If you have any questions for us, please chime in. We love the interaction. We love people asking questions as we go through the topic. So I've got my questions for you, Sean. We've gone through.
I'm less concerned about your questions than just an unfiltered group of questions coming in.
That's right. So. That's right. This is unfiltered, real, authentic, as it says on the screen. So we're going to learn about you, Sean, a little bit, and kind of how you got to this point in your career. So also the world famous envelope icebreaker game that a lot of guests enjoy. So you get to pick a number. So Sean, if you want to just kind of tell people that don't know you a little bit about your background and what led you to this work that you're doing with salary.com, and we'll go from there, my friend.
Yeah, so I usually try to, without giving my age away, say I've been around kind of the HR space since last millennium. Mostly comp and ben, a little bit of talent acquisition places. It's what's one of the interesting things to see over time is I do change jobs, not infrequently. At some level, almost like a consultant, but on staff. So I just love solving problems. And I think my wife jokingly will say I'm a fixer. As you get older, you realize I'm not a great maintainer, actually. So, everyone always talks about, everyone wants to be a fixer or whatever. And there are people who are great maintainers. I would not be on that page or the second page or the third page, but I love tackling new problems and everything like that. And then usually go either find a new problem at that company or go somewhere else. And in this case, actually, Salary had a couple areas where I could start to potentially help, and on the product strategy side. And I'm a boomerang. This is my first boomerang time ever. So I was around, again, showing my age in the, late aughts, right before they were sold the first time. Really interesting history of Salary. Those who don't know, they, went public, then were sold. Then actually the management team that founded the company bought them back. Several years later. Yeah. And then, and they're off and going again in the space. The tool suite, probably leveled off a little bit during that point, but is really escalating over the past several years. And so, really interesting. Just, boomerang back as I was meeting with some of the people. They're like, well, if you're thinking of your next problem to solve and fun things to tackle, we have a few, every company. So head on back.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. I obviously knew that, but just some of the things that you brought up, I did not know. So thanks for sharing that. And you're on the East Coast, right? You're out in Massachusetts.
I am. So they're also a Massachusetts-based company, and I think the other thing in my history that's probably a little different than not everyone knows is I come from development. So I actually was a developer by trade. So I'm basically a developer and product person by trade, but came from the development side of the house and kind of begrudgingly have, maneuvered into the business side of the house and actually being out in market some over time. Like any good developer, they had to, push me out of my cubicle and my corner, my dark corner. but I've enjoyed it more as I've gotten older too.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I I cannot wait to dive into this topic because it definitely aligns with some of the things that we do at Payroll Partners and working with our clients and trying to help them with technology available. So I did want to bring up all year I'm going through every week and doing a word of the week blog. So this week is on optimism. So if you go to SpeakEasy HR under blog, you will find all of the previous weeks and also this week. So as we went through Mental Health Awareness Month, I had some focused on mental health. But take a look at the blog and subscribe. You can get those in your inbox every week at speakeasyhr.com. So, all right, Sean, are you ready to play the world famous envelope icebreaker game?
I am ready.
Are you nervous?
Yes, because I don't know,
You don't know these questions.
The longer you have these, the more concerned I am that they're going to get a little crazy because you're going to need, keeping it fresh requires the circle to get a little bigger.
So I haven't changed these questions since I started last July. And I think as I go into next month, having a full year, I'm going to have to change up the questions.
See, so that's what I was worried about, actually, was I was going to be the cat that we'll try a new one on. No.
Nope. These are all the original 15 questions. So think of a number 1 through 15, and I'm going to play this quick transition, and we will get to it here. Hold on 1 second. I think it played. I don't know.
It did play.
Okay. Well, it played for you. It didn't play for me. It was stuck. Anyway.
Number 3 for 3 kids.
Number 3 for 3 kids. There you go. I always like when people tell me why they pick the number too. So
yeah. So, and actually to make it worse, I numbered my kids. So if I yell a number in a crowd, the proper child will, that's not the real names, but the proper child will reply.
There you go. That's very cool. Well, this one's fitting. It is, what was your first job that you earned a paycheck with taxes deducted?
I was a dishwasher, which actually, there's a cool podcast out Mike Wood puts out, which is called My First Job, which is really interesting to see. So I was on there talking about it. And then this past weekend, this came up. I was at the church supper on Dish Monkey, basically for the evening, providing services and having a Wayback Machine, which actually that is now 41 years ago.
Okay.
Something like that. 41, 42 years ago, starting as a dishwasher.
Yeah. There you go. That's great. All right. One more. You get to pick one more.
1 to 15. 15 was my basketball number. I will take 15.
Okay. I haven't had someone pick 15 lately. All right. What was your favorite band growing up? Favorite
band growing up, I would say probably Rush from the older school and Mother Love Bone, Pearl Jam in the next wave, but definitely a Rush fan.
Awesome. Well, good. Those were fun. See, those weren't too bad.
No, and I wasn't that worried.
Those were pretty easy.
I was waiting for the new 15 that had something like, give me your meaning of life or something like that, and then I'd be in trouble.
That's a good way of coming into the season. Number 2 is having different, just really, really like tough questions to answer, right?
Yeah.
Like just throwing somebody way off.
That's right.
But haven't gotten there yet. So anyway, we have an awesome topic to get into with Sean Luitjens, salary.com, VP of Product Strategy. So before we dive into that, just a couple of quick messages from our presenting sponsor, Payroll Partners. So if you want to grab a drink of water, Sean, get ready for this. And
finding a new employee takes time and money.
Hopefully it'll play.
For one position on a single job board, you could easily spend a minimum of $5 to $10 a day advertising a job post. It's worth noting that the average time it takes to hire a new employee is 36 days. However, it can take longer than that. You could find yourself paying hundreds of dollars a month for a single job board. And if you're using multiple job boards for multiple positions, this could add up to thousands of dollars a month. there is a much simpler and more affordable way of finding the right candidate. At Payroll Partners, we offer an applicant tracking system to help manage your hiring process. Our ATS is customizable, allowing you to decide which days you want to run the job and when to close it so you don't break the bank. And this feature lets you e-blast your network, posting jobs on multiple boards at once, all managed in one location. Payroll Partners, elevating your payroll and HR experience.
So we are in the Midwest, but we can work anywhere you are. So if you are fed up with who you're working with in the payroll and HR technology, look us up. We love to work with businesses under 2,500 employees or less. A lot of small businesses love our system, love our support, dedicated support that we have. So look us up. Let us know how we can help you with Payroll Partners. All right, Sean. So when I came to you as obviously a future guest on SpeakEasy HR, we talked about things that you're working on in your world, and so you had brought up this topic, and I haven't had someone come on and talk about this particular topic, so I was really excited. I've had similar topics, but this one's a little different, and it really hits home to, I think, a lot of what I do and what we do at the company, and also things that you're working on Seller.com. So it was just a really good topic to connect with. So, as you think about this topic, let's start with your we've talked about your story a little bit with Seller.com, but what excites you the most about product strategy in this HR tech space that you're working on right now, and really into the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. If you think about the past couple years, I know we talked about too, is what's changed in the past couple years. I think at a recent conference, I was asked what's changed in the past 5 years. And I'm like, actually about 2 years ago, I went on vacation and came back. I went on vacation the week that AI kind of bounced in, right? You think about it, so think about that week in particular. But, think about the past 2 years and the evolution of AI. That's the biggest thing, right? I know we made it a whopping 10 minutes in. Both from a standpoint of the tools, but the ability for tools to be built really fast, right?
Yeah.
What's really interesting to me when you think about product strategy is the fundamental problem in payroll and total rewards hasn't changed, right? We want to pay people the best way we can, on time, accurately, at the right rate, make sure that the end user understands why they're getting paid, and kind of the Harvard MBA answer, maximize our, human spend, or human capital spend in the best way possible to drive business results, right? That's about as MBA-ish as I'm going to get today, probably. But I think that's still the goal, right? And I think what's really changed over the past year is the noise that sits around all the new tools and the tech and all this stuff. Is we still fundamentally have employees doing a job somewhere that may have changed with AI, right? So maybe their values changed, and we need to pay them, at the right rate in the market to try to keep the best people, have people who are underperformers either, perform better, hopefully, right? So we don't have turnover or leave. Those fundamental underlying premises to what both payroll and total rewards are doing haven't changed. But oh my gosh, how you get there, and the ability to make changes or be more complex in how you solve or work that problem, that's changed significantly. So that to me is the big challenge. How do you basically take a product strategy for what might have been a big group, still doing the same thing, and now split that out in the best way possible for each different persona and way, leveraging tech to still achieve the same kind of, blue skies, rainbows, and unicorns results of everyone being happy with their pay.
Yeah. So how has the compensation landscape evolved in the last few years, especially with pay transparency and equity in your world, would you say?
So a couple of things. I think obviously, you had pay equity and transparency come out, and you saw states kind of jump on board. And then the EU pay transparency directive, the EU directive 970 is 1 year away. I think June 7th. 2026. So if you're a US based multinational where you have those things, you have that staring you down in the face. That was all coming. And when you look at that piece, and then you had an administrative change in the United States, which is created change, right?
Right.
Not going to argue good, bad, or indifferent on here, right? But it's created change, and so I think you've seen some of that piece in the technology for that particular piece on pay equity
Right.
change. Mostly on the legislative side, I still am, and you know what, the word's optimism. So actually, I always say I'm super optimistic about humans, and that
Okay.
most people, I've been reprimanded a lot, most, maybe not all, want to be good payers. Most
Yeah.
companies want to be good payers, right? If you actually
Yeah.
took the fact of resources out of the way, I know, I see that, and
How about
I
that?
didn't even plan for that.
Nope. You didn't even know
Um,
that.
Most people want to be good payers, right? I mean, you've got limitations on, revenue and expense and everything else, but all
Yep.
things being equal, if you took most humans that manage people and leaders and said, we want to pay people equitably, they would love to do that. There are probably very few as a whole. So
Yeah.
I think on the equity side, that's still the undertones of like, hey, we do want to pay people accordingly, irregardless of gender, race, religion. Like, I still think that's a thing, right? And they want to
Right.
correct that.
Right.
On the tech side, I think you've seen the ability for people to enter spaces um, become significantly easier on the software side. So I plug this almost everywhere. I need to talk to Paul Ryman at Novo Insights. If you haven't looked at, and maybe you can put it in there, Novo Insights, Novo insights.com. He puts together a really good map about the compensation technology in the space.
Hey, I'm Katie Van Horn.
And I'm Jackie Clayton.
We're your hosts of the Inclusive AF podcast, where we take on DEI, leadership, and HR without all the corporate fluff.
That's right. We've got decades of experience, a lot of opinions, and zero tolerance for performative anything.
Every week, we dig into what it really takes to build inclusive workplaces with honesty, strategy, and a few side eyes.
We'll talk about the tough stuff, power dynamics, privilege, what's broken in the system, and how we can all do better.
And don't worry, it's not all heavy. We bring receipts, laughs, and real talk from people actually doing the work.
Think of it as your weekly dose of truth, tips, and a little tea to help you lead with intention and show up for your people.
So if you're ready to push past the buzzwords and get into the actual work of inclusion,
you're in the right place. So subscribe to the Inclusive AF podcast.
New episodes drop every week.
Catch us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll be here breaking it down one inclusive convo at a time.
And the first thing you're going to see when you look at it, the first thing you're going to think is, oh shit, because it is literally just in comp planning. It might have 25 vendors. That doesn't include, kind of why I want to talk about our topic today, that doesn't include players like ADP or Paycor or, other companies that are in the payroll space,
Yep.
the UKGs of the world that offer these tools alongside a payroll, and now pretty ubiquitous.
Exactly.
And so it's just gotten really, really complicated. Like, we're still trying to figure out what's the right place, how much to pay people.
Yep.
How much, what are my pay ranges? How do I give out raises? And then how do I pay and deliver those accurately? Like, that hasn't changed. But the complexity around your ability to make really big programs and complex programs has changed, and the tools out there to change it and who's offering those tools has changed.
Right. So when you look at the challenges that HR is facing today, when it comes to compensation, right, and helping organizations with their comp strategies, how can technology solve their challenges with all of that right now?
So let me preface it with, I think the one thing that's changed for payroll, and I think actually where you and I started talking was, it used to be payroll and total rewards. They didn't talk to each other, right? Only if there was a problem or like a check, like, hey, did Sean really get a pay cut? Deservingly so, probably. And how much was it? Is that right? Like, okay, fine. And then you go deliver it, right? That was it, right? You did comp planning. You got a file with the new comp planning stuff. Over it went to payroll. And I didn't even talk to payroll unless they got done. That's become very gray. They're working together. I think more and more. I think the other thing that's happened is communication has become part of the job. So a lot of comp and payroll people, I think historically, were like, where can I go, work with numbers, have a big impact on the business, but I'd like to talk to no humans, please. and you went to total rewards, right? And you went to payroll. And now they're like, actually, we have to do this communications piece with pay transparency and everything else. I'm of an age, and young people can't believe it, where it was actually against the rules, right? It was legitimately an HR violation to talk to you about what I make. Now we're on the other side. So I think there's two big things that come to mind for me when you talk about what's changed, like in the environment for their roles. One is communications. And so I think the one thing I haven't changed, and this was difficult last week, I was at a conference 2 weeks ago presenting with, 1,000 people in the audience between me and the door. And I had to basically say, just to let you guys know, you're always going to be blamed, right? HR is always going to get blamed for the pay increases and or payroll, right? So
Exactly.
my saying this past year has been, you're going to get pushed in front of the bus. You might as well decorate the bus, decide what time and bus station you're getting pushed out in front of traffic. And by that, I mean, like, hey, use the communications aspects of your company and the marketing team and other areas to go back out and say, here's our pay philosophy. We pay high for performers well. If you're low in the range, we pay more. If you're high in the range, and start to set the expectation from a communication standpoint so that we know. So, David, you're a high performer. You've been a high performer for years. You know where you are paid in the range. We've communicated that out. Most people's people strategy, I'm convinced, David, is not to hire dumb people. It's generally to hire smart people. I mean, that's the goal, right? Whether they achieve that or not is one another, but understand that. So you start to set the basis for that. So when you go have a discussion, you're like, I know based on all the tools and the communication that I'm a high performer, but I'm high in the range. I can start to mitigate what I'm going to have. Same for me. I'm a poor performer every year. I know that poor performers high in the range don't get any money. I walk into the meeting expecting a low to zero number, right? And that helps a lot with managers really be able to use their dollars best if the HR, payroll, communications team can all put that information out there, basically color the bus the right color. Because again, at the end of the day, the reason I say this, David, it sounds awful for comp and payroll people, is if I'm working for you, right?
Right.
And you have to give me a raise that is equivalent to $10 a paycheck based on some merit matrix, right? I'm thinking like, dude, that doesn't even cover the Netflix increase, right? You want to blame HR, right? And say it's their policy, it's their thing, so they can frame that out. To me, it's not that first message sucks for you, right?
Right.
That for sure. But really, the problem is the next 364 days.
Right.
Like now, you think I'm going to come to work for the next 364 days and be super fired up about my $10 raise? Probably not, right? And so that's why I think HR fundamentally just has to admit they're going to be put under there. I think payroll is going to get that as they take on some of this other items along with total rewards, which is why I like that communications piece. The second piece, and then I'll shut up and let you ask questions. The second piece is actually the tech, actually. So on the flip side of that is the technology. And so where you used to try to handle pay equity by saying people who are paid high, low, medium, in the range, you might have tertiles, right? You're in the middle, you're kind of high or low. That's good. I might have 1, 2, or 3 performance ratings. You could create a 10 by 10 grid. I mean, you could do quintiles, you could do like deciles. And basically then you're starting to create people who are paid lower in the range get more money, and you can solve pay equity in a way that you couldn't do with spreadsheets, because prior the pay philosophy was kind of dictated by like, how good are you at Excel? Like, am I a pivot table master? Do I know VB script? Hundreds of spreadsheets that go out, they got to come back fraught with errors. Like, that's what you were trying to get done. So now you can be more strategic and align those to business goals and everything else. That's the super cool part of the job, is being able to align those back to actual numbers. So when I go, hey, am I really a poor performer? You could be like, actually, yes, let's look at this. These are all the drivers of this. These are your numbers. This is a you problem, not a me problem.
Right.
And I think the tech can help with that a lot. And when we originally were talking, payroll's right at the heart of that, right? Payroll is the core number one number. And a lot of times it's in the system of record. And that's where a lot of this data can either, it's a big part of it or it can be part of it.
Right. Yeah, it's all specific to the industry. When I've been in healthcare and construction, I saw when people would leave for 50 cents more on the hour, right? And so there's so many more factors involved in that to help retain your employees beyond the hourly pay, and how you motivate people to come and bring their best to work. So, just knowing like what I've seen, and how these different industries have been very competitive in our area. It's different everywhere, but I think it's very important, no matter what industry you're in, to have the right technology and the right resources to fit your industry to make sure you're competitive, but also find ways to incentivize your employees to go above and beyond their job. Give them some, performance-based bonuses, not just an yearly raise, right? So there's so many things creatively that companies can do, and the manager. I mean, it's a simple thank you for doing your job and recognizing that goes a long way. Doesn't really cost much to say, Sean, great job. You crushed that project. Like, give them the recognition they deserve. So I think people sometimes
even
don't
the
realize.
ability to pull in data, right? Like you're talking about. So
Yeah.
payroll has this data, right?
Yeah.
Whether you do it there or elsewhere, are you pulling in, compensation data on what is the internal market? But now there's, real-time data from other sources or scrape data,
Right.
basically data from job postings, and create alerts like, hey, actually, do you realize, we're offering, especially hourly wages, right? We're offering at a
Right.
dollar less. Or do you realize our employees with 2 years tenure have the opening rate at the box store down the road? Like you can start to get in front of that thing because the data now can be brought in and set into context. And so again,
Right.
it's a very MBA answer, I realize, because it's like, hey, let's just do this, and then I wash my hands and leave and tell you to do it. There's work that has to go with it. The data's got to be good. The cool thing about payroll, and the reason I originally was like, it's so cool, is payroll's data is right. You don't even have to trust. This will sound awful if there's payroll people listening. You don't even have to trust or like the payroll people, but they know better than I know. As soon as someone's pay is wrong, somebody's on their office. It's a
Yep.
self-fulfilling, it's a self-data checking number. It's right. Because if my number is wrong, I'm messaging them the day after payroll happens, if not that day, right? To be like,
Yep.
hey, my number is not right. My increase wasn't
Yep.
right. So it's one of the most right numbers because it's literally checked by every human on there.
Yep. Absolutely. So when you talk about total rewards, and maybe some people think total rewards and they have a different definition, in your mind, Sean, and people that maybe, let's say we're talking to people that are newer in HR, newer to their organization. They're just graduating and they're getting into the workforce and they're listening to this. What in your mind is total rewards when it comes to your definition, or how can you explain that?
Yep. So usually they come in kind of four-ish buckets, 5 buckets, sorry. So on your pay, you've got your base pay. Everyone's
Yep.
familiar with that. Almost everybody knows that number. You have your short-term incentive, which would be your bonus, right?
Yep.
That I get annually, quarterly, what have you. Commissions is usually considered part of your base pay when we think about that. It's kind of treated tax-wise as such. Those make 1 year total cash, a lot of people will call it. So from a definition standpoint, what is my 1 year? What do I make every year? What's my money, right? You get long-term incentives. So can be stocks, phantom shares, stock options, performance units, any of that stuff, that's out there on that front. Then benefits. Benefits, we're both Americans. So we have, maybe the most complicated system in the world to kind of figure that out, right? As anybody knows, right? Actually, as someone who just switched jobs, you get reminded of how complicated, and, they did a great job with ours. It's just, switching them in the US is hard. They have real value, right? In the US where it's not nationalized. And so what you're paying as an employee contribution is different than someone else's, even though the value in the market might be different. All the other benefits and ancillary benefits that come into that package have value when they go. So those all are what most people consider your total rewards package.
Yeah.
And if you can count, that's 4. And I said 5. So just so
Yep.
you know, I'm not crazy. That's the ones you can put hard dollars to. So I can say, actually, the
Right.
company spends and I spend this much per year. The last piece, a lot of times people will put in there are just rewards, and they're a little softer. And I actually think that goes by employee. And so, what's the culture like? Do I have an opportunity for promotion? What's the opportunity equity inside the company? Do I get to work remote? Whatever those things are. And that value, while all the others are dictated by the company, I mean, you can ask for more money and everything else and more
Yeah.
benefits, but they're dictated by the company. You really assign that value. And by that, I mean, you might say culture is important to you, and then you take a job that pays more money. So I would argue no. And so I usually tell people to go away and think about, like, how much is this stuff actually worth? And
Yeah.
you're like, well, no, it's literally a number, David, that you would, I would take a remote job for this. I would take, for a better boss or opportunity to learn, I would take this much less money. They're not going to pay you more, right? Let's be, just the spirit of honesty. You don't usually get paid more for that stuff. But what would I do for work flexibility? Because I want to be home with my family. I want to see kids get off the bus. And, that stuff, like, legit, is it a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000? Like, what's it matter to you? And then you add all that stuff up. And if there's a delta, that's your total rewards package.
Right. And that one right now is so important and so interesting to me. The other things are common. They've been around for a long time. Every year you've got to go through benefit changes and you got to see who's competitive. So we just went through that at Payroll Partners, and we did a pretty good job of finding good benefits to offer our employees, right? But that's part of the deal. That's part of what HR's responsibility is. It's figuring out how you can be competitive against your other competitors with what kind of opportunity you're giving people. Are you paying for their certifications? That's a big push. People want to be recognized. People want good managers and people that they want to be managed by. Like, who wants to be managed by someone that's a jerk? It makes their lives a like constant headache. You wake up on a Monday, how do you feel going to work? Right? Like, if you're excited to go to work and you're paid well and you got a good job, you're in a small category, a small percentage of people. A lot of people are miserable. They're dealing with mental health issues, and that's another dynamic that people are having to focus on is how are we supporting mental health in the workplace, and that kind of stuff we didn't have to deal with 5 years ago. It just wasn't that
we
big
should have. We probably should have back through our
Yeah.
history. We just didn't, right?
Yes. So those things are evolving, and it all plays into factors of how you can stay competitive. So what advice would you give, Sean, to HR leaders that are really trying to balance competitive compensation with, like, budget constraints and what the company's trying to focus on from a strategy?
So I think the thing you mentioned, like, what type of people, we want, and does that cost more or less, and, what type of environment? More importantly, because of technology, you can segment your compensation. And by that, I mean, I can pay different people in different roles according to the importance of the business, right? So if I need to stretch my dollar, there's always been the merit matrix, right? Which, for those, the wide range would be, again, if I'm a high or low performer, I get paid more or less for an increase, but also across a matrix of things like, where am I paid, either internally, externally, compared to the market, right?
Yep.
So am I the lowest paid person that's a 5 this year, and David's paid a lot more, then his increase is going to be less, because what we're trying to do is make sure that for the same output, we're paying the same, which is really the definition of pay equity, right? It's the same pay for the same work, not the same pay for the exact same job. It's actually the same work. And so if I'm not a good employee, right, and you're a great employee, we should be paid differently as we go. So, but when we segment, we start talking about things. I'll use accountants as an example a lot of times. If I'm in I know they're important in a manufacturing business, but I'm in a manufacturing business. An accountant might be something that's a more transferable skill based on what that is, not as important to the business as maybe the manufacturing engineer, process engineer. But if I'm an accounting professional services firm, I am the product. that is probably driving the business more and the business results. And so I need to pay higher in the range in the market. And in general, you get what you pay for, right? I mean, over time. So I think that's where, companies can start to look at that and say, this is an important role, for us. We have to. And where's the market moving? And again, this market dollars, not only the market from the pay, but supply and demand. And so you start to look and say, actually, this position isn't moving. There's a lot of great survey data out there, market data to say, hey, the internal labor market price is this, 100K. And actually, most of the job postings are 95K. Well, that tells you, very remedial example, but that tells you right now, like, actually, David's a high performer, but he's not going anywhere, right? So I can move some of that money over to this other role, which is, hey, these roles are important to the business and tagged. And I need to make sure that I'm spending my, my dollars elsewhere. And this is where, the complexity, I think in the past, one, you couldn't do it, but two, you didn't have to do it. You're like, if you said, hey, this is what I'd like to do, you're like, we can't do that in Excel. How are we going to do that in Excel across 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 employees? Even the magnitude of hundreds of employees, how do you do that? And now I think you can actually have a really complex, if you wanted, pay philosophy that aligns to your business practices to maximize dollars. The other thing I'll add there is that's the negative direction, which I think you're talking about. Hey, everybody gets 3 or 4%, right? That's the usual rate. But I think you can start to get in front of the CFO as well to say, where do you want to pay? We want to be a great payer. I was out in front of a group last year in Atlanta, 300 people, David. I just remember 300 because it gives you almost statistically, sound sample. I said, how many companies want to pay 50 percentile or higher, right? They all raise their hand, right? Now, obviously, by now, everyone knows I'm not the smartest guy because we've been talking for 30 plus minutes. But even I know at that point, like, that's not actually possible for everyone to pay over the average.
Right.
And so this is where you need to start aligning, with management and say, where do you want to pay? And then run the numbers backwards. And this is where payroll becomes really important because you have the actual numbers, right? To basically go back in and say, well, if we do want to pay like this for this, it's not a 3% increase next year. It's a 5% increase, because a lot of the times when they're given the increase to push down and you're like, we don't have any money, it's too late. It's budgeted.
Right.
Ship has sailed. So can you push it back up? And at a minimum, at least, you're taking yourself out from being in front of the bus a little bit, right? Because you're saying, actually, you wanted us to do magic with this 3%, but what you're asking for is a 5% fix. So where do you want us to give and get alignment?
Absolutely. We have a question for Sean from Robert. He's got questions. What advice do you have for someone considering shifting their career into payroll, total rewards? What things should they learn first? Thank you, Robert. Very good.
Yeah, thank you. Two things. I don't know that much about payroll. So that's a you question. I'll let you answer that. Other than they are the group, they remind me of more than any department, IT, because I always say, you only get emails when things go wrong. I'm as guilty. I've never sent an email to payroll and said, hey, David, I just want to say thanks. I just got 12 months in a row correct in my payroll. Like, does that email actually exist anywhere? I'm not 100% sure it does. On total rewards, I think actually just learning the process that's out there. There's a couple of places where you can go from, how do I figure out a market rate? How do I create pay ranges? What's a job architecture? And then, how does comp planning process work? And then how do we check that and just start diving in? Comp's interesting. I don't know about payroll, but I would argue 90% of comp found them. They didn't find comp. I don't know if payroll is that much like that.
Yeah, I think for payroll, Robert, you can go to payroll.org. You can learn a lot there. They have certifications that we internally focus on helping our team get certified. So there's some certifications out there for people in payroll. I think a lot of people that like to solve problems, work with numbers, work with customers. Customer service is huge for this kind of industry still for us. And so I think people that want to get into the career of HR and payroll, I think it's a matter of what do you enjoy when it comes to figuring things out, putting puzzles together and piecing things together and problem solving with a client that might have some issues with technology, and how can you help them with that? That's what we try to do. We try to build the system around the company and what they want the system to do, and then we just support them and service them. So when they call us and have a question or problem, we want to handle it for them. Obviously, hearing from them a lot on the good. If they have anything, that we need to improve on, obviously that's important for us too. But I think a lot of people in payroll that have been doing it for a while, they just enjoy the numbers, the numbers piece, and just getting things accurate and processing it. And you're involved in the part of the business that everybody is there, obviously, at the end of the day, to get a paycheck. You're working to get a paycheck. Most people work to get a paycheck. They're not there just to work. If you're there to just work and you're getting paid for it, that's probably like a dream job for you, and so it's kind of like most people are doing it to pay bills, support their family, pay for education, save up for retirement, right? Work for health insurance so that they have health insurance for their family. And it really is rewarding, and people really do enjoy it. So hopefully that helped answer your question, Robert.
I'll just add really quick. World at Work is and payroll.org is one. World at Work is the one on the other side, and that's a great call out. And actually just reminds me of all those things you just said, which is why payroll and total rewards are really tricky, right?
Yeah.
All the other stuff, it is people's pay. It is super personal. And I know there's a lot of polls out there jokingly at times that will say, what's the number one reason people leave, all this stuff. And they'll show things other than pay. And I'm always like, if you cut secondary benefits, even created a medical benefit that changed the rate some, there'll be some people outside your office. I guarantee if you take 2% off everyone's pay in a week, you won't be able to get to everybody who calls you.
Right.
It really is, to your point, it is the number one reason people come. Sometimes they forget about it or they assume it's a given, but it is, which is why it's amazing to me, the payroll departments. And the thing with comp, it's kind of an annual cycle. Payroll delivers this stuff 12, 24, 26 times a year, which is crazy with all the changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to keep seeing changes in how payroll is going to evolve and how companies are going to have to set themselves up for being prepared for all that when things are going to potentially change in the future. So having the right technology is so important. I've been there. I've done that. I've been in so many situations where I was just so fed up with the service, lack of support. Technology was great, but I didn't know how to fix things. So then I had to try to call somebody and hopefully would get a hold of somebody. and it was just such a headache. And you had Friday afternoons, people were so mad at you because you didn't have their payroll right.
Yeah.
And it was hard enough to find people to work in that job. It was hard enough to find people to do the job. Then you'd hire them, and then all you want to do is pay them right. And when you do that, great. If you don't, you're going to have problems. It's very personal, like you said. So what's one, I guess, innovation or shift in this technology space that you think most people aren't really talking about that should be right now, Sean?
I think the LLMs, so technical on the AI side, the LLMs and the learnings for everybody's tool. So everybody's going to be have their own LLM. Well, I can't speak for everybody. So obviously, you can't call everyone else and see it, but you're seeing some domain expertise in specific LLMs, and how do you leverage that expertise best in your system, or be able to call that system and get it. And by that, I mean, obviously I don't get to see other people's tools the same way you get to see your own, right? You can't call up the other guy and ask him to see stuff. But, for example, if a payroll company wants to call and leverage Salary.com's LLM, that marketplace of LLMs is going to be very interesting, because you're going to have to pick and choose your best players, and they're going to be able to kind of plug and play as they go. And so the cool thing will be, the hard part will be, which ones do I use, who's been around, who has the most data, and which one's accurate, because there's a lot of AI talk, but there's not as much out live and in the wild, right? And actually being used in a real way. And then how do I pick them? And then how do I put together my ecosystem, which could be pretty cool? And which ones do I use myself? And I think that's the next 12 months of the tech side, the LLM piece, where it's like I may be able to access and leverage some of the benefits of some of the tools inside of my tool natively. But that's going to require you and the partners working together on top of figuring out who has the cool toys and has enough expertise to have an LLM run. Because while I said there were a lot of comp tech partners, if you look at the number of AI partners and companies that have popped up that are AI only, it's an inordinate amount. And so my advice has been, I've quoted this a lot, but it's my speed, David. So it's Cheshire from Alice in Wonderland, Cheshire Cat. That's more my speed. If you don't know where you're going, all roads will lead you there. So really figure out what problem you're trying to solve, which ties into what you said, being in payroll and total rewards. And then work yourself back into quality partners who understand what you're trying to achieve. And the LLM and the AI are the technology that allow you to bridge that gap. You don't need to buy tech for the sense of, buying tech.
Yeah. Sean Luitjens with salary.com. We're live on LinkedIn and YouTube. So appreciate everyone tuning in. And if you have any questions that you're thinking of, maybe somebody else is also thinking about it. So put it in the chat. Would love to get to those. Sean, the only other question I had for you is about, I've seen some get in trouble using AI when it comes to recruiting and the applicant tracking systems and how they're singling out or following the process of selecting applicants, right? I know there's one particular that just got, I think it's going through some kind of lawsuit currently that really pinpoints, I think, the concern that a lot of people have. So I guess what advice would you give people as they are posting jobs to try to find the right applicants? Maybe they're having a hard time getting good applicants, or what advice or ideas or strategy would you suggest that they work through as they're posting jobs over the next 6 months, trying to maybe shake up the way that they're trying to find good applicants?
That's always an interesting one for me. For one, I started my career in the HR space at monster.com way back, right? Jokingly, we didn't have enough jobs or enough candidates, and then we had too many jobs and not enough candidates. Then there was probably a week where we had it right, where we had the right mix. The other reason that always, I guess, hits home is I'm pretty uneducated when it comes to lack of college degree, et cetera. And so I'm one of those that's an interesting use case around going through that filter, right? So I'm unhireable via an ATS with AI, right? Because I don't meet the minimum threshold. And so to me, I think when people are looking at this, I would say with any tech, right? Understand the levers and the toggles that you have inside of that to basically create, like, how big a sieve do I want and not? What are the options I have? Is it based on where they came from, from a tooling, how quick it was to apply? Did they fill out all the fields? Like, you might not have a college degree, but if you can fill out all the fields, that's key, right? Did they actually fill in the area why I want the job? Are there some places where I can take out, these easy applicants? Because you can apply for 1 million jobs at the same time. So this is the problem they're trying to solve, right? Is there's so many jobs and you can apply. And so the volume of applicants, if you just open it up, is tremendous. And there's no way to get through them all. So there needs to be a throttle on there. And so I think understanding what can I throttle that and how can I dial in, can I have my own LLM? And so that instance of your own LLM that's based on top of their core expertise, and then say, how do I dial it in so that at payroll partners, this is why we want to dial it in over time. So this is what's coming through. Like, we can wait that, education is worth less if they have these other things. Like, again, those complexities are going to be there. And then I think the other thing that's out there, you do this really well, David, is you network. I think right now, the tools are out there. LinkedIn has become an interesting tool, not from the recruiter standpoint in my mind. I mean, that's fine. But being able to find people and network has become pretty critical. But I am very cognizant actually of this, the tools actually starting to pull out good people. And then, the other examples you've seen of, I like baseball players, or things that people used to look for.
Yeah.
The LLM is highlighting kind of unequitable practices we might have had before. And so you're like, that's a traditionally male resume item.
Yeah.
And so you accidentally were not doing it. Now, will the LLMs get better and be like, okay, fine, you like baseball and softball? Probably still not super equitable because it's only baseball or softball players, but is it starting to, are those LLMs getting better? And much like comp, that's where I would say TA and comp, does the LLM have a lot of experience? Like, have they thought through these issues? Because there's so many companies out there to say there's enough data in their set to actually create really good rigor around the answer and not produce, data you don't want or hallucinations.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated when I interview people and they've been, let's say, looking for a job for 6 months, right? I've seen statistics where right now it's taking people 7 to 8 months to find a job. And like you said, networking, I'm kind of like, if people are taking that long to find a job, how much are they networking? How much are they leaving their house to go to places and job focus groups and things like that are available? We have one at our library every Wednesday. It's accountability group, right? People go volunteer, talk to people in transition, talk to people about their resume, their interview skills. It's great. It's free, right? But like, how many people are actually doing that? And it's really taking them that long to find a job. Then if you're currently looking for a job, I would do everything in your power to like leave the house and go network with people, go to events, go to things that you can get. It's like a part-time, full-time job to find a job.
It is, but I think a function, to be fair with that, I think part of finding a job taking that long is the recs are open longer now because there's the volume of resumes and the process that happens, right? So if you
Yep.
can quick apply and there's 2,000 resumes, someone's got to sort that through the filters and get down to a number and then schedule and do whatever. So I
Yep.
think the time is longer. Now, the question I have is, I agree with you 100%, is can I
Yeah.
shortcut myself to the top 10 by
Right.
being networked in somewhere and finding out about the job, as you go. It's interesting, having been of the age when I sent resumes initially out by paper, there is this interesting thing of how interested are people in the job versus when they apply.
Right.
And this is what I think HR is struggling with on their side. I mean, back in the day, you had to be, interested enough to retype a cover letter that was only for them. You had to have a resume, then you had to fold it up, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it. Not even all the kids know what the magic blue box is where you drop it off and it ends up in someone else's
Yeah.
place. And so that actually was, that dictated the pace at which people could apply because you're
Right.
like, I'm not going to do 100 of these. 100 now you can apply in 10 minutes
Yep.
with quick apply. And, everyone's solving different problems. But
Yeah.
I think that's part of the underlying reason why it takes so long is you get a rec out, you have a pay equity transparency thing. Where does this role go? Where does it level? What's this role? Where does it go? There's some checking there. Everyone's
Yeah.
got a day job. So I think the
Yeah.
process is taking longer actually at some level because of tech.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think that's spot on. So, um, Sean, anything coming into the pipeline and anything on the horizon at salary.com? Anything that you are working on or anything you want to say about your work there?
I'll do the best I can. I'm notoriously bad at advertising, so I actually usually punt. But no, I mean, salary's cool from the standpoint of all your market data, the ability to aggregate different sets of market data. New, they have a tool called Salary IQ, which is actually pretty slick about grabbing the jobs that are out on the marketplace, currently
Yeah.
being posted and aligning those to a job architecture. There's some cool tools for smaller companies and larger, but around job architecture. And then there's a comp planning tool. So it's kind of nuts to bolts around where it goes. And part of the strategy is they've acquired some of that and built it recently. So how do we put that together in a cool format? But I think part of salary.com's identity right now is they have a lot of really cool stuff. And this is kind of interesting, having been around since I was there before. They had a couple of things that have really matured, but I don't think people understand the breadth and depth. But that happens with every company as they mature. That you get known for a brand and then you grow. That's out there. And the last thing I'll add is if anybody's interested in that stuff, I'm not in sales. I usually joke and tell people like literally I can't sell you anything if you wanted to buy something. But I love to talk to people around how they're using tools, because I've never been a practitioner, David, and jokingly I've said I don't want to do that. That job looks like it sucks and it's hard. But the way I get feedback for product is by just having tons of virtual coffees and talking to people about what they're trying to achieve in the real world, because I'm building software for, with the team, for blue skies, rainbows, and unicorns to solve it. But how are people actually, what are they actually struggling with, is always a super cool conversation to have with people.
Yeah. I didn't bring this up last when we were going through about your background, but I did create a personal brand statement lately, just with everything I'm working on. So I'm not sure if you have one or any of our listeners has a personal brand statement. If you don't, that's really fine. I think it's really important to at least come up with a sentence or two about yourself and what you're trying to do in your job, in your career. So mine is to create positive and meaningful experiences that inspire, uplift, and make a lasting impact on individuals. So I'm involved in a lot: business owner, HR, podcast, and things that I get involved in. I try to do all of this. So, Sean, do you have a personal brand statement?
I think I've said this to other people in the past. I am a development and product nerd that is trying to make people who actually do the job that I don't want to do easier and simpler. So I think that's been kind of how I've said it over the years.
Yeah. Very good. Well, awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time, Sean. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I've really enjoyed interacting with you up to this point and having you on the show today. So this has been great to start the month of June and get into the summer episodes. So appreciate your time, Sean. This has been great.
This is great. I really appreciate it. Anytime. This stuff is always great to chat on.
Yeah. And if anyone isn't connected to Sean on LinkedIn, I highly suggest it. He's a great contact on LinkedIn. So reach out and ask him any questions. Julie has.
Yeah, she had the M dot in the back. Yeah. You can always tell. Yeah.
Iron Man ?
Yeah. It's a lifelong habit my wife is still trying to get me to kick. So
there you go.
No.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, good. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and I wish you all the best. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. We have another episode coming up next Monday, so be on the lookout for that episode on LinkedIn. So, Sean, we'll talk to you soon, my friend, and appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you later.